Hi, everyone. Today I'm thrilled to chat with Will Dawson, Senior Coordinating Producer at the Christian Broadcasting Network, also known as CBN. If you're on social media, you've likely seen their powerful videos, or you're probably following them too, featuring athletes sharing their faith. Will, I read you started as a sports anchor and reporter, then led a performing arts venue as executive director before joining CBN. You share redemptive stories that connect audiences with the heart of each narrative. I'm so excited to have you. Truly, I'm sure all my listeners have seen several of CBN's videos. They're just so powerful, and you guys are truly set apart from all the other typical athlete sharing, a lot of it's sports talk, the season talk, but you guys really just hone in individually with the athlete and just getting to the bare basics of their faith, which I always appreciate. And I'm always um, inspired by their answers and kind of surprised too sometimes. Not that I would have thought someone was, living a life of faith, but I sometimes I'm taken back, like, wow, that's amazing. I'm more of a fan for them. So I want to start off with you. And if you can share a little bit about yourself, your family, where you're from, and your own faith.
Yeah, there's a lot to share there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am a husband to Meg Dawson. We've been married for a little over 20 years. We have six kids that range in ages from 4 years old to 24 years old. And
Wow.
yeah, we have a big range and five boys, one girl who's 14. She's right in the middle.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, things are busy. My boys love sports. My girl doesn't love sports as much as they do. But yeah, as for me, I was raised all over the country. Primarily in Kentucky is where I'm from. So my fandom starts and ends with the Kentucky Wildcats and what they do on the basketball court, what they do on the football field. Though most recently, they haven't been great on the football field. But look, you're a fan of who you're a fan of, right?
Yeah, loyal.
Yeah, exactly. So we moved around quite a bit, and man, yeah, I've lived in 7 states of my own. So aside from Kentucky, I haven't found a professional sports team that an enormous fan of. Though we did live in Atlanta for several years when I was a younger kid in elementary school, and this was during the late '80s when the Braves were terrible. And so when the early '90s came and the Braves started winning all the divisions in that 1992 NLCS with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Francisco Cabrera hits the game-winning base hit, and Sid Bream comes and slides at home plate. To me, that's the greatest moment in baseball history. Though there are a lot of them for a lot of people. For you, I'm sure. What is your favorite sports moment? I know it has to do
uh,
something with the Dodgers.
Well, I also, like your daughter, I'm the only sister, even cousin. I have all boy cousins. So I grew up in sports. I played soccer. So I was always a soccer fan. And then as I got older, I became a baseball fan. And then when my husband and I were dating, he played baseball and his team was the Dodgers, which kind of worked out because I always say my cousin converted me to be a Dodger fan. So we both have tons of family in LA. And so just naturally, that's just became our sports, I guess, like commonality.
Yeah.
And that's what we kind of love over
Yeah,
um,
well, it's a good team to
everyone
follow,
else
that's
kind
for
of,
sure.
yeah. So the Dodgers are our favorite team. Although my daughter, she's it's a split house. She's a Padres fan. So
Yeah, how tough is that?
it's okay. She actually works for them. She just graduated from college. So she's having fun. And as long as she's having fun pursuing her dreams, we
Yeah.
support
Yeah, good. Well, yeah, you asked about my faith, and part of the whole redirection of my life, I attribute to and give credit to God for that, because I was kind of stuck and not knowing what I wanted to do at the University of Kentucky. And it took some time. Of course, I loved sports and always did, but initially I went into to college as a theater major and realized I didn't stack up against all of those other people that were there. It was a pretty big school, and I don't know how even these days how the University of Kentucky measures up against other theater programs in the country. I just knew that, yeah, this is probably not the direction I wanted to go. So I don't know. I was got into trouble in the ways that college students do. Not not in big time trouble or anything like that, but uh, was struggling, mentally struggling, school wise with my grades. I was struggling, and it took some time. And I finally, God pursued me, and I began pursuing Him, and so that really kind of redirected my whole trajectory. And transferred to Eastern Kentucky University, graduated with a broadcast degree. And after that, I had some purpose. I knew what I wanted to do, and started out as an anchor at KREX in Grand Junction, Colorado, a weekend sports anchor. And just after being there 9 months, I was offered a position at Christian Broadcasting Network. So this was back in 2006.
Oh, wow.
And I had seen the 700 Club, which is our flagship show, and occasionally would see a sports story. And I thought to myself, man, I would love to cover sports in a way that is different. I still love the X's and O's, and all of our guys at CBN Sports love the X's and O's, but we also are believers, and we care about helping those guys who already have a platform them even more to share their stories. And so my journey began there in 2006. I was there for almost 4 years, and then transfer. When I say transfer, my life was transported to where my wife is from, here in northern Indiana, and I went to seminary um, at Grace Theological Seminary here. And then at that time, like you mentioned, I was working at the Wagon Wheel Center for the Arts as the executive director, and then eventually came back to CBN. So there's nothing beautiful about that story. There's a lot of cut and paste, and I am where I am. But man, I'm so excited about the direction that CBN Sports is headed these days.
And as far as your faith, were you raised in church, or was it a moment, or if you were raised in church, was there a moment in your life that you kind of just solidified that for the rest of your life?
Both. Yeah, I was raised in a Christian home, but in high school, especially in college, getting freedom for the first time, I certainly wasn't following Him. It wasn't my priority. It wasn't. It didn't have my heart. There's no question. And so I would have called myself a Christian, and then again, getting into drinking and things that I shouldn't have been getting into, partying probably a little bit too much. I think at that time there was just a lot of confusion in my heart, and so I didn't necessarily love the gospel and love Christ until I was about 25 years old, actually. And so there was a moment, when I think it was after my 25th birthday, I woke up and thought, I don't, what do I have to show for 25 years of life? Nothing. And I believe wholeheartedly that God spoke that to me, though not in an audible voice, but it was more of a prodigal moment, where in the Bible, when the story of the prodigal son is happening, and Jesus is recounting the story of the prodigal son, that there's a moment when he comes to himself. And I kind of believe, as looking back in hindsight now, that that's similar to what happened with me. And so I remember jumping out of bed that morning, making my bed, reading my Bible, which is not something that I did before that day. And so it's God's grace pursuing me. Uh, I didn't do anything to earn it. I'm still a sinner saved by grace, and so I'm thankful for redirecting and a repurposing of my life, which is what He's done with me and what He's done with so many of us.
And was it that moment that you kind of took it where, when you went back to CBN, was there more of a deeper purpose um, of sharing the gospel, or what you were doing at that time there?
Yeah, well, at 25, I still hadn't graduated from college yet, so
Oh,
I
okay.
wasn't working with CBN. I'd transferred to Eastern Kentucky and then finished up within a couple of years. So my first job at KREX, I was 27 years old. So again, there was a lot of wasted time, a lot of questioning, a lot of self, self. I thought about myself a
Revolution.
lot, and and I shouldn't have. I should have been thinking about others and thinking about Christ first. But God uses those things certainly to draw us to Him and to help us to appreciate the fact that you know being a good person, Jesus said, no one is good. And the Apostle Paul says that all of our righteous deeds are like filthy rags. So we are all one. It's all level at the foot of the cross. And so I know my sin, have repented of my sin, and still have to do so on a daily basis because without God's grace, we're in trouble.
I agree. And so, who took, I'm assuming you took the realm of, I want to share athletes' faith and their stories. Is that how that started with CBN?
It did. Yeah, I saw a story on the 700 Club. Sean Alexander, who is a former Seahawks running back. And I thought to myself at that time, man, that would be so cool just to be able to share those stories. There was one guy at the time doing sports stories. And so I sent my reel to CBN, was hired pretty quickly. And my first trip was a training trip with now Andrew Knox, who is the vice president at the 700 Club. And we went to do a story with Albert Pujols. So we sat down in Albert Pujols, St. Louis Cardinals, sat down in his home. And on that same trip, we went to Lou Brock, who is former, or who is a Hall of Famer, passed away several years ago. Lou Brock sat down in his home, got to meet his wife and his family, and man, just really just these guys, and I'm sure that there are other people out there who proclaim faith and maybe aren't living it, but I started out that way, getting my credential with the St. Louis Cardinals and just walking out onto that field and thought to myself, man, this is it right here. If I can tell people's stories, athletes, famous athletes stories, or any athlete stories for that matter, their walk with Christ and get to know them, that is really what I want to do. And it's been a really cool ride since then. It was almost 20 years ago. The first World Series that I covered was in 2006 in Detroit, and the
Oh, wow.
Cardinals were playing the Tigers that year, and had a cool moment with Albert Pujols. Though I was so intimidated. If you've ever been to a World Series and been around the media and seen just the enormous scrum that it is with people sticking their hands out and the microphones that are sticking out, trying to get a question into someone when you only have a limited amount of time to do it. I was incredibly intimidated, even though I knew Albert and Albert knew me. Um, I didn't get a question in my first World Series to him, and I was completely bummed out
Mm.
about that. And then later on in the tunnel, he and Yadi Molina, Hall of Famer Yadi Molina, came out and saw me in the tunnel, like, "Hey, how's it going? How's your family?" and all that good stuff. And that lifted my spirits at that time. But
Oh,
things
there
have changed. I don't have a problem getting into the scrum and kind of asserting myself because I know that we have a job to do and it's what God wants us to do. And it does have an impact when we allow the athletes to tell their stories.
And can you share that with listeners? Like, what does that feel like, that scrum that you're describing?
Well, at big events like the World Series, like the All Star game, the Super Bowl, it's incredible the amount of media that there is from all over the world, and it's not just last year it was the Dodgers and the Yankees, and you would think the two biggest markets they're obviously going to have a lot of media there, and they did. But there's media from Japan, there's media from all of the Latin countries. It's really cool, but it's also very difficult because you're shoulder to shoulder, um, especially thinking about the Super Bowl as well. You may go 15 feet deep and 15 feet wide of a sea of reporters, and you're trying to work your way up to the front to yell, loud enough to get a question into one of the people, especially the stars.
Wow.
Think about a guy like Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani, who they have people, fighting. And I've seen fights actually break out, which is insane.
So I guess it kind of reminds me of a concert and you're trying to go through the mosh pit. Is that kind of maybe not so intense, but
Yeah.
yourself all the way up to the
Sure. Yeah. And I was never into the mosh pit scene when I was in college. I always preferred to stay away from that. But when you're needing to get a story, you don't have a choice. You gotta fight, not literally, but yeah, you gotta establish
maneuver your way.
position. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I love that. So next time I see you or any reporter, I'm going to be having this visual of behind the scenes
It's
of
the real
shoulders
deal.
shoving. So, was there a moment when, I guess, I don't know if maybe there's a certain player that you were interviewing where it just really encouraged you and motivated you to just continue doing this? Because it's a very cool thing to do, anyways. But was there a certain answer that a player had, or
Mm.
maybe emotions where you just said, I'm just going to do this rest of my life?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think probably back in 2000, so this would be 2006, 2007. I sat down with former Major League pitcher Paul Byrd. Paul Byrd was a journeyman. He pitched for the Royals, he pitched for the Braves, he pitched for the Indians, the Red Sox. I'm just thinking of teams that he pitched for over the years, and the Angels, I believe. Paul had been everywhere, but um, he wrote a book. Actually, this predated the book. So I sat down with Paul Byrd and told his story, and he talked about how he was getting knocked around all over the place, not being able to get anybody out. And he goes out to the mound and he's kind of doing this old school wind up Texas high leg kick. And he started getting guys out. And George Brett came out and told him, this is when he was in Kansas City. He was like, man, guys are really having trouble picking that ball up. You might want to consider doing that. And so he prayed and asked God to help him. At that time, he wasn't even sure he was going to make the club, but he made the club. And really, after that point, when he did his little wind up, that if you look on YouTube, I'm sure you can find old videos of Paul Byrd with his quirky wind up. But it really kind of pushed him forward in his career. But Paul talked about a lot of things and struggling with a lot of things, and he actually cried during the interview the first time that I interviewed him. And we walked away. I went out to the field and shot my stand up, came back, and the security guard slipped me a note and he said, hey, Paul Byrd, the guy that you were just here with, we were in Tampa at the time, and he was pitching for the Indians. And so it was the Tampa Bay Rays security guard. He said, he wanted to leave you a note. So he left me a note. He's like, man, I really enjoyed that conversation. Gave me his number. He's like, can we stay in touch? I'm like, absolutely. Yeah, I was a fairly young guy at the time, especially kind of a rookie in the business, that's for sure. And so not long after that, he had a book that came out called Freebird, which is an amazing book. And his publisher gave me a call and asked me if I would endorse the book. I was like, are you kidding me? I get to endorse a book? Yeah, I'll do that. So I'm in there with names like Ernie Johnson Jr. from NBA on TNT, Jeff Foxworthy, and then you've got my name, CBN Sports, Will Dawson. It was a cool moment for me,
That's amazing.
and we've continued to stay in touch over the years. And Paul's book, again, he gets very vulnerable, and I won't share his story, but I do encourage anybody, if they're interested in reading about it. Freebird with Paul Byrd is incredible. He's now an announcer with the Braves. He's like an on-field announcer, and he's so gifted, that guy. He's got a really welcoming personality and a great rapport with the players. He's funny and he does great. But yeah, that's a long answer to a question
No,
about
that's
how
a big
did I
deal.
want to continue doing it. I just making connections with guys, and Paul Byrd is one of those.
I think connections is key. I know from my experience, I'm really big on connections, and I think it's just letting the person that you're talking to just know you're just authentically being yourself, and it's not it's not like a want or I want something from you, which I'm sure they get a lot.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
as far as athletes, what I feel like I know personally why I love hearing athletes share their faith, but what do you think is like, what's the big, I don't even know how to describe it. Why do you think it's so amazing for listeners? Why are they drawn to hear these heroes share their faith?
Yeah. Well, there are 340 million Americans. 71% of Americans identify as sports fans. And so sometimes people who are resistant to hearing the gospel will listen to an athlete when they share the gospel. I think about how big of an impact that potentially could have in our country, the culture of Americans' culture. We're so divided right now. Here's the thing: 80 some percent of men are sports fans. 50% of women consider themselves casual fans. So that's, you come up with the number, 71% call themselves sports fans. But think about all of the fatherless homes in the country. 1 in 4 kids will grow up without a dad. But if 81% of men consider themselves sports fans, and they're more likely to hear the gospel coming from a guy named Aaron Judge or Freddie Freeman, for that matter, they may be more likely to listen to it, and they may be more likely to be transformed by those seeds that were planted. And now cultures are changing, families are changing. It's not a small deal. Sports is such a big business, and people worship sports, and they worship and they idolize the players in ways that are unhealthy a lot of times.
Yeah.
But if they are given the opportunity to hear the gospel because somebody with a jersey on that's no better than you or I, they just happen to be talented and God gifted in playing sports or playing baseball, then we are, I am so thrilled to be able to have that opportunity to have a moment like that when a camera is rolling and I've got a microphone sticking out and we're enabling the message to go forth. It's really cool. And I'm so thankful and so blessed to be able to do it.
I agree. I think it's very cool. For my birthday, my husband asked what I wanted to do, and I said I want to go see Kershaw make history. So he got us tickets, and it was very cool. When the entrance we came through, I saw a little group of kids, kind of like a little camp. And growing up in church as well, it felt familiar. It looked familiar to me. And I told my husband, I go, I bet you that's VBS. And sure enough, it was,
Oh, cool.
I think it was like staff and players' kids that were doing a VBS. So I thought that was very cool. But then when I got emotional watching Kershaw, just because he's my favorite player
Mm,
for so many reasons, but
yeah.
mainly because of his faith and who
Hmm.
he is as a husband and father. And um, I always see him as this gentle giant because he doesn't really talk, but when he talks, it's powerful and
Yeah.
people listen. And it was just so I think just seeing so many people not just to wear his jersey or his shirt, but people all around were just so amazed and so I don't even know how to describe it. They were just so, everyone that I talked to, even the people around me, because you make friends with the people you're sitting next to, and they all just said, he's just a great guy, a
Yeah.
great all around guy. And that's why he has so much respect. So what do you say for athletes like that, where they just have such a huge impression on people, where it's beyond sports, it's beyond baseball?
Yeah, there are some people who can walk into a room and just command attention. And I think that's a leader. I know Clayton Kershaw is a leader in that clubhouse and has been for a really long time. He's a baseball legend. There are other people who have had talent and haven't been that kind of leader. And I know those are things that God has given them, these people, that ability for some reason to bring, people who might not necessarily agree with him, to bring them together. He's a unifier. I know that some of the things that he says, people don't like, and there's some division because of that. I know the gospel is offensive to people, and so there's going to be some division that comes from that. But when you look at Clayton Kershaw, the man, as the baseball player, he is a unifier. He's a leader, and again, he commands respect not because he demands it, but because he's someone that you want to follow, just in the way that he carries himself. I think there are a lot of other guys that are like that as well, and yeah, he's a legend. I don't know how much longer he has, but I know that he's done everything that he could possibly do with his career and his ability.
I agree. I kind of call him a little bit like a Kobe, but with the
Yeah.
Dodgers, just being a long-term Dodger player,
Hmm.
it's quite a history and resume he has. Um, so, is there a pivotal moment that you will never forget that's ingrained in your memory of a time you interviewed a player and their response?
One specific question. Yeah, there are a few moments like that. There are a few experiences that I've had sitting down with someone in their living room. I think most recently, one that I'll never forget, just because this is really the first time that anything that we have done has gone viral, and that is the question that I asked Aaron Judge. And I thought his answer was great. I don't know if you're familiar with that or you saw that clip, but
Yeah, was it a recent? It was a recent one, like last week or something like
it
that.
was at the All-Star game back in July in Atlanta. And, a lot of times the questions that we ask, because we only have a certain amount of time, we're trying to get as many guys as possible. We'll just ask them about their faith. Do you, and I find those people now, it's easy to find them on social media. If they've got even if they have a Bible verse, right, you'll go and ask them. And sometimes you get good answers, sometimes you don't. But I had kind of built a rapport with Aaron since the All Star game last year. I started asking him faith questions, and then at the World Series again, he's a guy who was adopted by his parents, and so I said, "The Bible's full of adoption imagery. Does that help you in your faith? Does it help you understand God's love more?" He had a great answer to that, and so I thought, what do I ask him this time around? And I had heard something about how Aaron Judge, who was 6'7", 6'8", whatever he is, so recognizable that he has trouble even walking down the street. And some people might say, oh, boo-hoo for you. Um, fame is just everything. I couldn't even imagine being famous. I'd handle it so much better than you would. If I had all this money, I would handle it so much better than you would.
Of course.
So I asked him, if what would you say to somebody who thinks that fame and fortune would be the answer to all their problems? And he kind of echoed what King Solomon said in Proverbs, and that is that, or I'm sorry, in Ecclesiastes, and that it's great, it's great, but it doesn't make me better than somebody else, and it's not the ultimate. And it sounds like it's an easy thing to say when you're someone who has fame and you have a lot of money, but it doesn't change the fact that you need a savior and you're still going to have problems. And so for Aaron Judge, who has a hard time walking down the street and doesn't really have a lot of privacy, and yeah, he's got millions of dollars, and yeah, he's got fame, and he's a great baseball player, but really his ultimate problem is the fact that he needs a savior. And he knows that his Lord and Savior Jesus Christ is what he said is the answer to all of his problems. And of course, it won't fix all your problems. Your car is still going to break down, and you're still going to have sicknesses, and you're going to deal with family members who have illnesses and pass away. We're all going to pass away. But the ultimate goal for anybody should be what happens to you on the day that you die, and living a life of purpose, living a life following Jesus. For Aaron Judge and for myself and for you is something that is worth more than anything else, and fame and fortune included.
I completely agree. And that was kind of the one reason why I started this podcast. I wanted to share people's lives and their purpose. And I actually was inspired by ESPN 360 just because growing up loving sports and being a little tomboy myself, I always felt that athletes endure so much every day, all day, just trying to be at that competitive level. And every day of the year, they're training, practicing, playing, and what an accomplishment that is. But also, they've faced failures, they faced all of these hurdles just to get there, in addition to whatever's going on in their personal life, their family. They're humans just like us facing
Hmm.
obstacles. So, but they push through beyond that. And I'm always inspired by athletes just because of that alone and that mentalness that they have to endure and push through. So I'm always enamored whenever I hear and see your guys' videos and anticipating what these athletes have to share. So, can you tell us about CBN's heart and mission in bringing these faith filled stories to life?
It's interesting because for more than 65 years, the Christian Broadcasting Network has been aired on television all over the country and all over the world. CBN International covers, I don't even know how many countries they're in right now. So CBN is worldwide. And television had always been the focus for CBN. And really, to the to the detriment of sharing on social media. Social media was even though, what are we looking at? How many years of social media? 15, 20 years that it's been around.
Mhm.
Um, we haven't even with CBN Sports haven't been on social media, but just about a year and a half.
Oh,
And so
wow.
our focus had always been on television, and we knew. So when I say CBN Sports, it really is myself, my camera guy Jason Gill, another guy Tyler Harvey, and then one other sports reporter who's been there for a while, and that's Tom Buring. So there are four of us, and we know how many opportunities, how many stories are out there that we can't even cover, and we've just started scratching the surface when it comes to this
Wow.
social media thing. But the reach is incredible. We are available in over 1 million homes on Freeform. It used to be the Family Channel, and then it was ABC Family, and now it's Freeform. 700 Club airs every single day. CBN News airs every single day. They've got 3 million followers on YouTube, and we're glad to share those stories on CBN News. But this whole venture with CBN Sports is a new thing, surprisingly, unbelievably, embarrassingly. But I think that God's timing is perfect, and we're excited to be able to share these stories and continue to push forward. I think that we're going to continue to grow. This is one of those things where I started crunching some numbers and have shared them uh, with the organization, and it's something that is going to continue to grow because there's no denying the impact that it's having all over the place.
I completely agree. Completely agree. There's many times where friends will share with me, they'll forward me a video and of what was shared, and I think it's just one of those things where you just have to love and smile when you hear them talk. It's just like a good feeling type moment,
Mhm.
and then it makes you just not be a fan of them on the field, but also just spiritually and as a human being, just being a fan of them. And
Absolutely.
because I think that's important for people to just see them like these human beings outside of sports and sharing their heart. And what better way and just to go straight to the jugular, I guess you could say, of
Yeah.
the deep part of their heart.
Here's the thing too, when I go and talk to somebody, for the most part I don't have a lot of information on them. I mentioned I'll see a Bible verse or a post that they've reposted on social media, but a guy like Michael Kopech for the Dodgers that I talked to last year during the World Series, I asked him that a question about his faith. I can't even remember what I asked him, and he was like, man, thank you so much for asking that question. And then he goes into all of his troubles that he's had in the past and how he's looking to Christ now and he's walking with him. And I was like, wow, there are guys that really will pour out their hearts and are thankful that they have the opportunity to share that because, you know, again, if you find yourself in a World Series scrum and there are 50 to 100 other reporters that are trying to get a story, and I completely appreciate what they're doing. Sometimes if you ask a faith question, you will get an eye roll or two, or why are we doing, we're trying
From
to
the
talk
other
about.
reporters.
Yeah, yeah.
Walking.
It's not uncommon to get an eye roll or a frustrated, can you
Like they
go
want a
somewhere
sports
else?
answer. They want a sports question, a game question.
Yeah, yeah. So to be able to be unique in that arena, and even, you know that you might face some of that trouble as you're walking in to ask those questions. When somebody opens up to you and says, "Man, thank you. Yeah, let me talk to you for a minute about that," or 2 minutes, or whatever they decide to share. That's pretty special, and I don't take that lightly. It is a blessing to be able to do what we do.
I agree. Michael Kopech, I follow his wife, and she shares a lot of the faith. So I'm always loving that too, especially the
Hmm.
wives, because I think the wives share a little bit more of home and off the field, off game topics. They just share the root of their family, and it's always inspiring and encouraging seeing that. And I definitely love that.
Yeah, and when I talking about the wives too, these are guys who are gone a lot of the year, and they get a ton of recognition, and their wives are at home taking care of the family, and
Moving
they
around, whatever the
they
case
yeah,
is.
they have to move at the drop of a hat. When I was at Albert Pujols' house, in fact, and it's not because he had been traded or anything, but they were living out of boxes. Same way with another player that I interviewed in Cincinnati who is no longer in the league. But just thinking about all that they have to endure, and again, yeah, the money is great, but when your husband's not around, and you're dealing with, the air conditioner doesn't work, or I need somebody to help to do something in the yard, or the kids are sick, and I've got to go do this or that. The wives, really, it's important for the wives also to have fellowship and have a Christian community. And so hearing about, just you talking about that reminded me of the fact that they're sometimes the forgotten uh, member of that union.
I agree. Yeah, they play every part in their husband's success. Um, Whatever goes on in their life and professionally and career, the wives do take a massive part of that, and it's really, I think, even with putting faith aside, just looking as a marriage, it's beautiful when you see the husband give a lot of appreciation to the wife because they are like the hidden master teammate behind the
No doubt.
scenes.
Yeah, it's the same way with my wife, that's for sure.
I like to say for myself too with my husband. um, so, where do you see CBN growing and doing in the future?
Well, hopefully, yeah, hopefully continuing in sports and our sports coverage. When you think about the massive amount of sports fans in the United States, then multiply that on a global scale when you think about soccer and all of the international sports, especially soccer for that matter, tennis in
Mm,
our own country, NASCAR. There are a lot of things that we haven't done yet that I would love to. Last year, and actually the first year, 3 years ago, 2 years ago now, we've been to three College World Series. We had never done that before. Last year was the first All Star game. We're just now getting into to going to the All Star game. I would love to go to the college football national championship in January. I think there's reason to do that. I'd love to go to Wimbledon. I'd love to go to the Masters and go cover a British Open across the pond, and even as Major League Baseball opens their season in Tokyo or wherever they're in South Korea. Man, I would love to do that too because there are so many people who care about it. There are so many people who are watching, and it's just more opportunity for us to allow those guys to speak about their faith and to be honest and to open up about their struggles and to talk about talk about God, to put him on a pedestal. And that's ultimately what we want to do. And I think, man, there's an unlimited amount of opportunity to do that. And so I'm excited to be really, is this is crazy to say it, but it is the ground floor for CBN Sports. We have so much potential. And again, God gets the glory.
Amen. And I am so excited to see you guys just, not that you haven't taken off already, but just hearing what's next. That sounds exciting, an exciting adventure and of sharing faith. Before we leave, is there any words of encouragement that you like to share with the listeners?
Ooh, good question. Yeah, you know what? This is one of those things where, again, where I find CBN Sports right now is just trusting God's timing. I know that through the years as we're covering, and sometimes we feel like people aren't watching. Are we putting this in front? Are we doing everything that we can to make sure that people are seeing? And there's always frustration, and no matter what you do, professional athletes go through frustration. Baseball is a game of failure, and they have to continue to trust in the position that they're put in, trust in the gifts that God has given them. I would just say, whatever you're doing, whatever God has given you, whatever goal God has given you, or whatever desires He's given you, as long as they're godly desires, He will make sure that you accomplish them. And if you don't accomplish them in the way that you think, they will be accomplished in a way that helps you and ultimately brings glory to Him. And so, again, it's self-talk for us because we're trying to push forward with this thing. And so, one thing that we have to keep reminding ourselves is just to trust God's timing, to know that He is in control and that He will open doors when He wants doors to be open.
I completely agree. And where can people follow you and CBN?
You can follow CBN Sports on Instagram at CBN Sports uh, underscore, CBN Sports underscore. And
I'll
then
link
on you,
that too, just so you know.
what's that?
I'll be linking everything too in the
Oh,
show.
awesome! Yeah, thank you. And then on YouTube, I'm on social media at Will Dawson TV. It's a lot more fun to follow CBN Sports. I'm not that exciting, but and I really just share the same things that happen over at CBN Sports. So that's on X and on Instagram and on YouTube. But yeah, we'd love to have people follow along and hope that we encourage them in the stories and the clips that we share.
Well, thank you so much. And I know our listeners are going to be so excited. And I really encourage them to follow you guys and to take a deep dive in all of the videos and athletes you have shared because it's definitely worth watching. So thank you
Awesome.
so much. I
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you,
it.
Priscilla.
Thank you.